Hello, everybody, and I'd like to welcome you today to the Council Executive Meeting for those in the room, those taking part over the telephone, and also those watching the meeting. And we've got quite a few agenda items today, so I will move straight through the business. The only thing to note first is that everybody that is expected to be here is here, and there are a few councillors who are not here in order to reduce the numbers insofar as that is possible. Then the first agenda item is declarations of interest. So if any colleagues that would like to declare an additional declaration could indicate. Councillor Waller.
Thank you, Chair. As a governor at Westfield Primary, I will not participate in item 11 and will leave the room.
Thank you very much for that. I cannot see any others, so no further declarations to make. And then that takes us straight on to agenda item 2, which is the minutes of the previous meeting that are set out on pages 3 to 12. And again, I'll just give a couple of seconds in case there are any issues that anybody would want to raise in the minutes. If not, if I could please see, and it would be helpful to see your hands, and then I will still confirm that that's the majority decision, just in case it's not easily noticeable for those watching at home. So for those that can accept the minutes, could they show now, please? Thank you very much. So that's a clear majority in favour of accepting the minutes. That takes us on to agenda item 3, which is public participation. And we have 3 registered public participants. And if I could thank them all for dialing into the meeting again to reduce the numbers present. Our first public speaker is Councillor Douglas, who's registered to speak on agenda item 6, supporting the York economy. Hopefully, Councillor Douglas, you're with us, and I will now hear a voice.
Yes, yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me okay?
Great, we can. It's really clear, and you've got 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I'm speaking tonight on agenda item 6, supporting the York economy, in particular the proposal for CYC to become a signatory to the Good Business Charter and York to become a Good Business Charter city. Labour councillors Stuart Barnes and I were particularly instrumental in the early stage investigation of a similar scheme through our role on Economy and Place Scrutiny Committee. It's a shame the executive member didn't see it appropriate to keep the committee updated on progress. I really don't think we would be seeing this item now if it weren't for our pre-pandemic work. The Good Business Charter is a valuable scheme with a simple accreditation allowing businesses to highlight their good business practices in 10 areas and giving them firm goals to work towards. This includes employee terms and conditions, environmental impact, responsibilities to society, and an ethical supply chain. CYC has made good progress in encouraging other notable York employers to join the movement. We all know there is a long way to go yet to ensure all York businesses work to these principles and bring important benefits to their employees and the wider York community. I do have concerns that CYC has some way to go, and I don't agree with the report telling us that an initial review suggests that none contain any areas that would be challenging for CYC. We are already a living wage council. While CYC is an accredited living wage foundation employer and pays its directly employed staff the real living wage of £9.50 per hour, there are big questions around regularly contracted workers. We know around 30% of the domiciliary care workers for adults contracted by CYC through outsourcing agreements aren't paid the £9.50 per hour floor wage. I've seen no committed attempt to change this. The Living Wage Foundation accreditation extends to promoting and upholding its scheme through the council's supply chains, and that includes regularly contracted workers. I've also had reports from local union representatives that an organisation the council is encouraging to join the scheme has been associated with fire and rehire practices. That is firing staff and rehiring them on lower pay and worse terms and conditions. I know the Good Business Charter management and staff are very hot on enforcing compliance by the businesses that sign up to the scheme and have clear routes for any member of the public to whistleblow on poor or non-compliant practices. I would love to see York held up as the home of fair and socially responsible business practices. I look forward to seeing strong movement in this direction. For a start, the council needs to look closely at its own practices and get its own house in order. It's the only route forward if York's business community are going to see this as a credible and worthwhile scheme. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Douglas, and your comments will be taken into account when we consider agenda item 6. Our second public speaker today is Councillor Perrett, who is registered on agenda item 7, recycling, collection options and waste consultation. Councillor Perrett, hopefully you can hear me and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully you can all hear me. So thank you. I will accept that the whole process for the recycling, collection options and waste consultation, it's been driven by the need to purchase new vehicles. But with regards to recommendation 5, I wanted to ask if more could have been done to review routes ahead of the vehicle purchase, because I wondered if there was any risk of assets becoming redundant because we would review them after we'd purchased new vehicles. I'm really glad that the exec members taken on board comments from Labour members and from others to avoid introducing a hugely unpopular system, one which many felt was complex and would lead to regular confusion as to what waste to present each week during the proposed system cycle. When there's such a huge response to a consultation, it tends to indicate that proposals are out of touch with what the people of York need and want, and I'd urge the executive member to continue to listen to the public and work with them to create a system that works and is simple to understand for everyone across the city, and also takes into account the different levels of waste that are presented, the amount of recycling that people would like to do in addition. And also, apologies if you can hear my dog in the background, somebody's just knocked at the door. I've completely lost my train of thought, so I will end there because I do need to go sort out a dog situation. Sorry, everyone.
Thank you very much, Councillor Pear. I'm sure we can understand, having worked at home. So thank you very much for your comments that will get taken into account when we consider agenda item 7. And our third public speaker is Councillor Crawshaw, who is registered to speak on agenda item 8 and 10, which is the future of Medigold and also the finance and performance outturn. And Councillor Crawshaw, hopefully you can hear me and you have your 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, everybody. I just want to talk to you briefly on agenda items 8 and 10 on the future of Medigold and the Council's approach to absence management. First of all, just a quick correction. I believe the call-in that was referred to at paragraph 18 took place in January 2019 rather than January 2020. But CSMC has received several updates on the implementation of the Medigold contract since I took over as chair in May 2019. More recently, we received an early version of the report before you today. And whilst committee members did not agree a clear steer for executive, the general consensus was that a further year's contract extension was acceptable given the impact of COVID-19. I did want to raise some concerns though, however, that we mustn't lose sight of the aims of the initial 2-year trial, which was to address an immediate issue whilst building up skills within the management teams, such that we shouldn't become dependent on an external provider in the long term. And it's disappointing then to note that at present only 47% of managers agree that the Medigold Day 1 absence system allows them to manage their staff in a more detailed and timely manner. Whilst I absolutely accept the distorting effect of COVID on the measured impact of the contract arrangements to date, one of which may potentially be an increase in presenteeism when significant numbers of staff are working from home, I'm concerned that the pandemic effect is not used either to justify a longer-term contract extension or to downplay any lack of progress in moving towards a long-term sustainable in-house method for effectively managing staff absence. So it's therefore my view that whilst option 1 is acceptable given the specific circumstances of the past year, it should be clearly understood that option 4 is the preference beyond the end of this contract extension, and that in light of that, appropriate resources should be made available sooner rather than later to ensure a smooth transition at the contract end in September 2022. Moving on to agenda item 10, the finance and performance outturn for 2020-21. Whilst I fully acknowledge what a difficult year it's been for the council and in no way wish to undervalue the hard work of many members of staff, I do find myself questioning some of the framing of the cover report, given the detail contained in the annexes. In particular, the budget position in adult social care, as outlined at paragraph 7, suggests that the £3.9 million turnaround from a 2.7 million projected overspend to a 1.2 million underspend in just 3 months is perfectly normal and is, quotes, due in no small part to a lot of hard work from finding ways of mitigating the budget position. Now, when we looked at the Q3 monitor at CSMC just a few weeks ago, we found little or no concrete evidence of mitigations despite individual budget overspends within the Adult Social Care Directorate totalling over £8 million. And I note that a similar figure is reached when totaling the overspends as set out in the annexes today. Indeed, we specifically requested that the Chief Finance Officer bring more detail to future scrutiny sessions such that we might understand what these mitigations actually are. And I'm disappointed, therefore, that within this report, I can only find around 1.3 million of underspends, mainly due to a lack of demand for particular services during the pandemic or an overestimation of need when the previous budgets were set. And I see little clear evidence of how further savings or mitigations have been made. Now, this leads me to believe that the significant improvement in fortunes is almost, if not entirely, down to the one-off use of a one-off non-recurrent funding. And as such, little has been done to address the significant structural issues. And this would be fine given the year that we've just had. Adults and children's services have borne the brunt of the COVID-19 impacts, and staff in these areas need support and respite. I've got no issue with using a windfall grant to make things a little bit easier on the front line. But let's call it what it is, and let's be honest about the significant funding issues that these areas face and will continue to face. It doesn't do anyone any good to pretend that everything is rosy in the garden when little is being done to address the thorns. So I hope that it will be possible to provide far clearer detail when this outturn comes through scrutiny in due course. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Crawshaw, and your comments will be taken into account when we consider agenda items 8 and 10. So I'd like to thank all three of our public speakers, and then that takes us straight on to agenda item 4, which is the forward plan, and that's set out on pages 13 to 16. So if I could please see those in favour of accepting the forward plan. Thank you very much. That's a clear majority in favour of accepting the forward plan. Councillor Crackhill did not put her hand up, but this is what we're learning with in-person meetings. It was Councillor Waller last time that had to be reminded of the differences. But are you happy with the forward plan? Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. We'll then move on to agenda item 5, which is the recovery and renewal strategy report for the June update, and I'll hand over to Ian.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just a few things I was going to mention. I think first of all, just in terms of the latest position in terms of public health figures, you'll see in the paper it talks in sort of paragraphs 8, 9, 10 about the current rates. Since then, rates have gone up. They are running about 100 cases per 100,000 population in York. That is broadly consistent with what is happening nationally as well, where case rates are going up. On the positive, however, the rates in terms of cases for the over 60s remains very low, and I think that is the strong positive from those, and clearly that is the impact of the vaccinations. The number of people in terms of intensive care at the hospital is still 0 at this point in time, and in terms of actual numbers of the over 60s, that figure is around about sort of 12 per 100,000 for the over 60s. That translates into about 6 cases for over 60s over last week. So you can see that actually the impact of vaccination programme is strong, whereby most of the cases are occurring in younger people. Obviously quite a few school children, younger people who haven't been vaccinated, and the older generations, you are still seeing very low cases. Just in terms of a couple of other things in the report, there is a section in terms of the work the council has done in terms of the economy and supporting the city centre in particular, and some of those measures, particularly the outdoor space. And clearly that has gone down very well. You'll know that York is very busy at the moment, particularly with the weather at present. And clearly there are aspects of that where I think we might want to look at continuing that clearly post-pandemic in terms of the impact that's having. And then the third and final thing I was just going to mention, which is in the report, is there is an update in terms of work with the public health team, not just in terms of what they've done on COVID, but also their wider work. And clearly, going forward, that work, you know, even in a post-COVID world, remains incredibly important in terms of the health of the population. And so there's details set out in the report in relation to that. I'll stop there, Chair.
Thank you very much for that, Ian. I'll make a few comments before I open it, in case anybody else has any others. But as you just said, I think it's fair to say that June's recovery update has come yet again at an important time, particularly with the changes to the national guidance and recent government announcements. And as many residents will be aware, the number of positive cases have increased. And to emphasise that point, paragraph 11 shows that York's rate of positive cases was 29.4 per 100,000 of the population on the 4th of June. However, as of yesterday, York's 7-day rate of positive cases was 102.6 per 100,000. But with that increase in the number of positive cases, I know that council staff and our public health teams, for example, have been visiting local communities to offer free testing kits. And more recently, a pop-up vaccination centre will also open at York St John University, managed by Nimbus Care, allowing those eligible to book appointments or simply walk in to receive the vaccine. But despite the increase in cases, there is also that good news to be positive about as the vaccine rollout continues to make great strides. And as detailed in powers 9 and 10, it's estimated that over half of the city's population have received their first jab, and that over 40% have had both. With the restrictions remaining in place and also the postponement of stage 4 of the roadmap, it continues to be a really challenging time for many local businesses. And as such, using the funding available to us, we've put forward a series of proposals to the government that would enable us to further support the city centre trading environment, increase the frequency of street cleaning, and also expand the support on offer to our secondary shopping areas in Acomb and Haxby. And lastly, I just want to take the opportunity to thank all of those volunteers that have come forward since the pandemic began, and this is reflected in paragraph 19 of the report. From help with shopping to speaking to somebody living on their own, the work of volunteers has been incredibly valuable. And like our key workers, the city owes you a great deal for your efforts. As we move into summer, I would encourage everybody to keep an eye on the council's communication channels for the latest public health advice, particularly as we approach the 19th of July for the next government announcement. And for now, I'm happy to propose that we note the report. Just to check if any colleagues have any questions or comments. If not, I could see all of those in favour of noting the report, please. Thank you very much. That's a clear majority in favour of accepting that report. That then takes us on to agenda item 6, which is supporting the York economy. And this is on pages 43 to 126 of our agenda packs. And we're joined by James, who will present the report. Thanks, James.
Thank you, Chair. So the paper before you has 3 key elements to it. The first element is around the evaluation of the micro grants scheme, which was the council funded grants of up to £1,000, which have been given out to over 1,000 businesses. The second element is our support for business networks throughout the pandemic. And the third, as you've already heard about tonight, is about the Good Business Charter. The common thread across these 3 elements is focusing on small and micro businesses and their crucial role in York's economy. Working in true partnership with businesses' own organisations such as the Federation of Small Business, the Chamber, Indie York, Traders Group, BID, Institute of Directors, etc. And the third theme is the promotion of ethical business approaches, underpinning climate change, good employment, and celebrating the role of businesses in strengthening communities. I'll just talk about each of those 3 elements briefly. The external evaluation of micro grants has been really positive. It's shown that actually The money that we gave out on easy terms to as many businesses as possible, trusting them to make best use of the funds, that trust was well placed. Some headline findings show excellent value from the investment. Nearly 300 businesses would have failed and 500 households would have lost valuable income without that funding. Over 600 businesses were helped to adapt and diversify, showing lots of potential for innovation in micro and small businesses, which are usually ignored as lifestyle businesses. I draw executives' attention to the quotes in para 19 of the report on the wellbeing impact of these grants on our communities. The second element was the business networks and trader groups. The close collaboration has been part of York's success during COVID and has informed our work on city recovery. It's now clear that some of the events, such as the Food and Drink Festival, Jorvik Viking Festival, Ice Trail, etc., will need some support to get going again this year. The report recommends making 100k of the remaining ARG funding to support such events. I'm pleased to be able to update on that recommendation and confirm that funding has arrived from government now. It arrived yesterday. This will make a big difference in our work to keep York residents engaged with the city centre and support businesses throughout the winter. Finally, on the Good Business Charter, the Charter is described in outline. It's a business-led initiative which promotes many of York's key themes: a real living wage, environmental commitments, good employment practices, suitable for businesses of all sizes. York will be the first Good Business Charter city, and the Charter will be used to promote inclusive growth in our new economic strategy.
Thank you very much, James. So I'll go to Councillor Waller in a second, and if I could just check if there's anybody else intending to speak on this item, just so I know for timings later on the agenda, and I'll come in as well. So thank you very much, Councillor Waller.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to James for bringing the report. I think it's worth noting that throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, City of York Council has had a clear focus on working closely with the business community, supporting small and micro businesses, and promoting our unique approach to the economic situation, the York way. The £1.1 million of discretionary funding committed by members at the beginning of the pandemic recognised that small, micro and one-person businesses, including the many self-employed people ineligible for government support, are the foundation of the economy. I'd like to thank council officers and partners of the council who worked hard to make sure that this local system worked and to ensure that there were checks in place. It's resulted in a greater understanding of the needs of small and micro businesses, greater than previous years, and it's been a great connection with people. The priority had been, as with government grants, to get the money out of the door to where it was needed. As the report in front of the executive makes clear, it was about making sure that grants were available at a critical time and having an independent evaluation and from an organisation that's looked at other local authorities and work that's been done. They have reported a success in York and detailed the feedback ranging from the practical uses of the money, such as digitisation, diversification and purchase of new equipment, to very personal accounts of the impact the support had on the staff and the owners of these small businesses, that they felt valued. And it was a recognition that in the recovery, we would need these people to be around and to form part of that. Pivoting has been a much used word, probably more than before the pandemic, in terms of businesses changing rapidly the way that they did things or implementing the things that they thought they would need to do over a couple of years, and they had to implement that in a matter of weeks. But this was a system which enabled them to do that. So it's estimated that the grant funding, the micro grant funding, prevented nearly 300 York businesses from ceasing to trade permanently, and over 500 families and employees from falling into personal and financial hardship. whilst there's no doubt that numerous ongoing challenges remain for businesses as they emerge from lockdown, it's clear that the council scheme has had a significant impact on business confidence and resilience and provided a lifeline to many at a critical time. I'm grateful to those micro businesses and individuals who contacted me personally in the first instance and provided the evidence to work with officers to respond to the need out there. And also, in particular, to the officers who've answered the economic growth at york.gov.uk email address, which has been the channel for everything. But having all of that information come through the one point has been helpful in order that the authority can lobby where appropriate and ensure that there is the support going through. So as well as the government's own programme of additional restriction grants, we've been working with local business networks. The Federation of Small Businesses, who I've met virtually on a very regular basis, the Chamber of Commerce, the Institute of Directors, Indy York, the Retail Forum, and the York Business Improvement District, all of whom have really come together and to work for the benefit of the city. And that's been at the heart of the approach over the last year. The joint working will continue to shape the future approach to the local economic recovery and the consultation that is taking place for the new economic strategy. This is also further recognised in the proposal that City of York Council becomes a signatory to the Good Business Charter and that York becomes the first Good Business Charter city, promoting the Charter as a business-led approach to responsible business practices. It does help that it's business to business, talking about the challenges that they face, but that the benefits are important. As Mr. Gilchrist has emphasised, ensuring that some of the ARG is used to support the festivals that help the character of York as a heritage and family-friendly place to come, particularly during those quiet months when businesses are concerned about keeping going, and we'll recognise that many are not able to operate at full capacity, and therefore ensuring that our quieter times are that bit busier, but within safety constraints, and utilising our COVID support marshals. So this, alongside the proposed further investment in trader-led initiatives, will strengthen our citywide collaboration and support an inclusive local recovery, putting local small businesses first in what remains a challenging time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Waller. Councillor Cobain.
So thank you, Chair, and thanks for the report, James. I just wanted, on behalf of the Labour Group, to welcome the Good Business Charter. It is good news that this is happening, and I just wonder if the executive member has any more good news for us, and if you can tell us when they're going to extend the real living wage requirement to all contractors in the City of York supply chain.
Thank you very much for that. I can see Councillor Waller is frantically writing down, so I'll come back to that question in a second. I think for me, as Councillor Waller has already highlighted in his comments and in James's presentation of the report, there's been a great deal of work by the council in our efforts to support local businesses and the city's economy during the challenging period. And there is, of course, a lot more to be done. And we will also continue to lobby central government for the additional funding and also legislative changes that are needed for our business community to fully recover. And I do want to specifically welcome and endorse the recommendation for the council to sign up to the Good Business Charter and for York to become the first Good Business Charter city. As outlined in the report, the Charter will provide a model for businesses in York to contribute positively to the social, environmental and economic aspects of the city. And research has shown that such charters has been used to make positive progress on issues from fair pay, as just mentioned, to good public procurement. I would like to thank all of our partners for their support and engagement in this work. In particular, if I could thank Julian Richer of Richer Sounds, who has been championing the Charter through the Good Business Foundation, and to Charlie Jeffrey of the University of York. The university also has signed up to the Charter. We're incredibly lucky to have such strong support from partners, and I look forward to our work together as the country's first Good Business Charter city. Councillor Waller, I don't know if you want to come back on that and the sort of wider aspirations.
Looking at the Good Business Charter, this is about encouraging people, and we will be certainly encouraging our supply chain to sign up to the same. And therefore, I think there's a very positive initiative there, and many businesses in this city, particularly, it's been endorsed by the Federation of Small Businesses. So I'm very hopeful that it will be the game changer that is anticipated.
Thank you very much for that. So we've got the recommendations in front of us on agenda item 6. If I could please see all of those in favour of accepting those recommendations. Thank you very much. That's a clear majority in favour of accepting those recommendations. And that then takes us on to agenda item 7, which is recycling collection options and waste consultations on pages 127 to 270. And I'll hand straight back to James.
The council commenced a review of recycling, both to increase recycling rates, but also as it needed to replace its recycling vehicles. We have just finished the replacement of the vehicles for our residual waste, or the black bin waste. But we need to replace our recycling vehicles, which are now 10 years old and becoming unreliable. The way we collect recycling dictates the type of vehicles we need to purchase, so we needed to undertake this review. Therefore, through an executive member decision session and a scrutiny, we looked at options and narrowed down to a single preferred option as a different way of collecting recycling, which modelling showed stood a chance of increasing recycling rates. We started a citywide engagement and had over 7,000 responses. Just before we launched our consultation, the government launched consultations on a deposit return scheme and on making producers of waste responsible for the cost of recycling. We didn't feel that they majorly changed our consultation, so we proceeded with the city's consultation, talking to residents. Just as our consultation was about to close, the government launched a third consultation on mandating councils collecting certain types of waste. It would mandate the frequency of collections and also paying the council for collecting certain new waste streams. Despite those live consultations, the Environment Bill, which is the first stage in legislation to make the government's mandates happen, has been progressing and has now been passed to the House of Lords and had its first reading. In determining what changes the council should make, we need to be mindful of the direction of travel the government is indicating, not least to avoid abortive costs and the need to communicate on multiple occasions to residents about how they should present their waste. We have listened to residents who have given us some valuable feedback on the options we proposed. And whilst they supported some of the proposals, they felt some of the other changes were too complicated. Therefore, the report recommends that we formally thank those residents who fed back to us and use this information in our response to the government consultations, and delegate the final wording of the single collection methodology to myself in consultation with the executive member. We will not be progressing the move to 3 weekly recycling collections with a different stream collected each week. Residents told us that was too complicated. We will be increasing the garden waste collections by starting these in March rather than April through to November as we do now. We will make sure the new vehicles are used as efficiently as possible by reviewing the routes. And just to come back to Councillor Perrett's point, in terms of that routing work, we've done the tactical phase, which determines the number of vehicles we need, and we will then do the detailed modelling as the vehicles arrive. There are also a small number of properties that remain on a bagged service and don't have a bin. We'll be reviewing those with a view to moving them to a bin service where possible, as this will prepare them for any changes mandated by government and then allow us to explore providing a green waste collection to them. This will be reviewed with ward councillors and the executive member and residents engaged before coming to a decision session for a final decision. We have for a long time asked residents to mix plastic and tins, which are then separated at Harewood Wynn. During COVID, due to changes required to keep our staff safe, We have mixed glass, plastic and tins together and used the equipment at Harewood Wind to separate it. This has worked well with no impact on the quality of the materials collected, their value or the end point of recycling. Therefore, the report suggests that we'll make this the way to collect recycling going forward, allowing residents to put plastic tins and glass in either 1 or 2 boxes, but to please keep paper and card separate in either 1 or 2 of the other boxes. On the back of these recommendations, it allows us to purchase vehicles with split bodies for recycling.
Thank you very much, James. So again, I'll go to Councillor Widdowson as the exec member in a second, but just to check again if anybody else wanted to comment on this item. Thank you very much. So, Councillor Widdowson.
I always forget to do that. Welcome the report. As members will be well aware, the executive has previously committed to a review of recycling to help increase recycling rates across the city. This review is incredibly extensive, taking place first at the Economy and Place Policy and Scrutiny Committee, then a citywide consultation and focus group exercises. It is the first time in decades that we have spoken to our residents about waste and recycling, and the results from the consultation have been fed into the government consultation. I'd therefore like to begin by thanking scrutiny members and the thousands of residents who took part in the consultation and focus groups over the last few months. The consultation saw one of the largest responses to date, with over 7,000 submissions and 22,000 comments. The headline results from the survey can be found in paragraph 23 of the report and have directly fed into the decision executive are making today. They will also inform the council's response to the government's consultation on recycling. The timing of the government's recycling consultation, coupled with the new details emerging on the Environment Bill, means we cannot make any changes to the frequency of collections, nor to the containers for recycling that were originally considered. Until the Environmental Bill is passed and further details emerge from the National Recycling Consultation, there remains a significant amount of uncertainty over what councils will need to do and by when. Following these announcements and the extensive public engagement, we are asked to agree to several proposals which will provide a real opportunity to make a difference to help York become a cleaner and greener city and help residents recycle even more. This includes the procurement of a new fleet of recycling vehicles, which are the cleanest and greenest diesel vehicles available. And as James has already indicated, the routes have been reviewed and are much more efficient, as well as starting the garden waste collection a full month earlier. Garden waste collections currently run from April to November. From spring 2022, it'll be March to the end of November. Another change proposed in the paper is to begin the implementation of the bags to bins policy to convert approximately 6,000 households currently on a bag collection to a wheeled bin service, and explore the opportunities to provide them with a garden waste service. As noted in the paper, there will be a further report on this coming to my decision session. Over the past 16 months, we've devised a more efficient way of collecting recycling materials. As James has stated, residents can mix plastic, tins and glass in their containers, but we really do need the paper and cardboard to remain separate. The reason being that once the paper and card is contaminated, it becomes worthless. This will be clearly communicated to all residents and hopefully make their jobs easier. We know residents are doing a fantastic job of recycling in York. Curbside recycling is doing really well, with around 43% either being reused, recycled or composted. These changes will help us do even more. We will continue to work in partnership with residents and take every step possible to leave the environment in a better place than we found it. I urge members to approve the recommendations outlined in paragraph 11.
Thank you very much, Councillor Widdowson. Councillor Kilbane.
Thank you, Chair. And again, much to welcome in this report. There's clearly a huge appetite for recycling in the city, which is great to see. People would like to do more. I don't know how you managed to crunch 22,000 responses, but anyway, but I suppose my concerns with this is that given that you've not managed a single successful bin day so far this month, and that for years people have been diligently separating their recycling only to see it all thrown into the same container and into the same lorry, and now they're being told that their efforts were in fact in vain. I'd like to ask the exec member, Why should residents have confidence that you're going to be able to deliver these changes when we're currently failing to deliver the basic services that people pay for? Will you apologise to residents for failing to empty their bins and also for making them sort their recycling unnecessarily?
Thank you very much. I'll first bring in James. If you could comment on, I know, the service disruption and the reasons for that recently, which I know have been communicated, and also the comments about the mixing of waste and moving forward will be helpful. And then I'll bring Councillor Widdowson in.
Yes, so on the current issues with which are affecting green waste, we have a current shortage of LGV drivers, the drivers of the large vehicles. We have stopped other services to put drivers onto those services. So we've reduced some of the highway teams and we've got highways people supporting the waste services, but there is a shortage of LGV drivers across the country, which has been reflected both by supermarkets and other waste collection authorities across the country. We are doing a number of initiatives through apprenticeship schemes. We've trained loaders as drivers, but we have got a blip at the moment and it is impacting. The mitigations are getting us back close to where we want to be. We are much closer to getting all bins collected as per the calendars that we advertise to residents. We have focused our efforts to make sure that we collect residual waste and recycling, which are the statutory collections. Green waste is a discretionary collection and that's the one that is being impacted, but that is an intentional decision, prioritising the ones that affect health and recycling. On the issue of mixing of waste, we've always asked residents to keep it into the 3 streams. We are still asking them to. We have mixed glass with plastic and tins, but we haven't mixed it all up. We haven't mixed paper and card in, except for a small number of properties where we can't get the large vehicle with the 3 separate compartments in. The reason we didn't tell residents at the start of COVID to start presenting waste like that was until we'd completed this review, we didn't know whether that was going to be a permanent change. So the reason we communicated just to carry on as they were was so that actually we told them what we were doing, but we didn't ask them to present it differently because we didn't want to have mixed messages of saying, actually, we want you to go back to the way you were. It had just been very confusing for residents.
Thank you very much. Councillor Widdowson, anything to add?
Yes, thank you ever so much for that, James. In answer to the question, we have apologised to residents. We know that there has been disruption and there has been significant amount of communication across the city explaining what has happened. For the UK, we are 70,000 LGV, HGV drivers short. It's impacting on supermarkets, on bus drivers and on waste vehicles. We are moving staff around so that we can get as much waste collected as we possibly can. So I think the guys in the way that they are moving people across the service are doing a fantastic job. The vast majority of residents understand and are sympathetic, and we are getting back to where we should be. In terms of the prioritisation, we always make sure that the household bins are collected first and then the recycling. In terms of the 3 streams, being mixed, what we've done over the last 16 months is prove a technology. It wasn't proven, so we now know that it works, and we are now allowing that system to take place, so therefore our residents get an easier job because we have improved the system. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Widdowson. Councillor Kilbane, I'll let you come back, but I won't always, because of the number of agenda items.
Just for clarification, Chair, thanks. James, memory might not be serving me right, but was the reason given for the lack of HGV drivers at recent scrutiny that they were leaving to get higher paid work elsewhere? Wasn't that the reason that was given?
Whenever an employee leaves, we do an exit interview to understand the reasons. There have been a variety of reasons. Some have gone for higher paid jobs, and we have seen wage inflation because of that shortage. Some of the LGV drivers have left for a lower paid job, but that offers them more hours. So there's been a mix of responses. It's not a single trend. Some of them would like are prepared to do more hours to take home a larger pay. So they'll actually give up pension and and they're better pay rates to work more hours and take a bigger salary from a private operator. So there's been a range of sort of drivers behind it, if you'll forgive the pun.
Thank you very much. And so, having gone to the efforts, James, of cleaning that, you'll now have to do it again, having asked you to come back in. But thank you, everybody, for the comments. So we have the recommendations in front of us on agenda item 7. Could I please see all those in favour of the recommendations? So that's a clear majority in favour of those recommendations. Thank you very much. That then takes us on to agenda item 8, which is on pages 271 to 288, the future of the Medigold element of the CYC approach to absence management. And I'll hand over to Claire to introduce this to us.
Thank you. The report that's in front of you this evening, outlines some proposals in relation to the future of Medigold, the element of our approach to managing sickness absence in the council. You'll note it talks in 3 parts. It presents an updated overview of the sickness absence processes, feedback from across the organisation about Medigold process and options for future processes and the Medigold contract. You'll recall in 2019 we implemented Medigold in recognition or as a result of our overall sickness rates being much higher than the public sector benchmark. Just to pull out some main points from the report, Medigold itself provides us with real-time information around sickness absence. When somebody is absent from work, they call a call centre, and that kicks in with a reporting system for our line managers to help improve the management of sickness absence. It's 24/7. It enables improved categorisation of our sickness absence reporting. It's really helped with the connectivity between occupational health and sickness itself, and provides managers with early information in order to intervene quickly when people are absent from work. And it has seen that senior managers have been able to take decisions and managerial actions in relation to sickness absence. The last year or so, with COVID, it's provided us with invaluable tool really to understand where staff are. If they are calling with COVID, we've been able to really help with the track and trace, notwithstanding the fact that it's helped us now. The outcome so far of Medigold is that we've had very few managerial actions being left undone in terms of the process of managing sickness absence. Our rates have reduced and it's helped us to tackle long-term sickness. However, the contract will come to an end in October of this year, and there's a number of options that are presented to you starting on page 281. The proposal today is that we would continue with Medigold for a further period of time in order to fully assess the benefits of the system, which would put us in a better position to be able to compare with other organisations, with a view to present back a report with a greater evidence base in relation to our attendance management processes in due course. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I'll go to Councillor Eyre shortly, and just to check again if anybody else wanted to speak on that item. If not, Councillor Eyre.
Thank you, Chair. Everyone loves HR processes, so I was expecting everybody to put their hands up. So I shall endeavour to be relatively brief. I think, as the report says at paragraph 5, this has been probably a decade-long problem. It's spanned probably the 3rd administration that started to look at this one. I think I was first elected in 2007, and probably those issues that have run from 2007 to today would be waste collection, dog waste, potholes, and staff sickness. So it's something we've really struggled to deal with over time, and I think it's something both executive and the corporate scrutiny committee have looked at over that period of time, and it was felt that it was time for a change and we needed to do something different, and that's why we trialled this particular system. I think, as you alluded to, paragraph 15, that real-time sickness reporting that we had during COVID was absolutely invaluable, and I think it's my first time as an exec member getting that sort of granular detail on a daily basis, and it was fascinating to be able to see the level of information we had and how we were able to deploy our resources. I think we must therefore, with all the work that's gone in, welcome the reduction in staff sickness. This is, after all, about staff well-being and staff welfare, and I think we all want our staff to be well and be at work and doing the job that they want to do. Though we do take that with the significant caveat that COVID has had a big impact, and we can't, because of that, entirely be certain the reasons behind that significant drop-off. I know the comments in the report and were flagged by one of the speakers in terms of some of the mixed feedback, and that was something that was discussed in scrutiny. I think it's worth noting, as it says in the report, that a third of staff fortunately haven't had to use the system, which is again positive that staff are not having to take time off sick. But that also reflects the fact that if you haven't had that and haven't used the system, and someone asks you how the system is, it's very difficult to say it's of value to you. And as that shows, that will have a knock-on effect. If you're a manager who hasn't had many staff off sick, then you're less likely to see the value of the system than someone that has. So I think overall, I welcome the reduction. The key is that we need to sustain that and continue to see a significant drop-off. And we really do need to assess in a post-COVID world whether the system is the right way and the right way to go. And again, I note Councillor Corshaw's comments, and it was always our intention for this to be a short-term intervention. It would have ended at this period at the time we proposed it, but unfortunately we're not in the situation. I wouldn't go as far as to say exactly what's going to happen in 12 months' time, as it would be pointless having a further 1 year of assessment if we've already decided what we're going to do. So I certainly look forward to the next report in 12 months' time as is, to see how that report has gone, and hopefully we will be moving into that situation of being able to move services back in-house. With that, Chair, happy to approve the recommendations at paragraph 4 on page 271.
Thank you very much. So we have the recommendation there on agenda item 8. Could I please see all those in favour of accepting? Thank you very much. That's clear majority in favour of those recommendations. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you.
That then would have taken us on to agenda item 9, which was the merger of York Coroner area with North Yorkshire County Council Coroner areas, although there's been a change that I'll ask Janie to introduce. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The Ministry of Justice has, following publication of the report, advised that they wish to make amendments to the business case, which is before Executive this afternoon for consideration. I'm not currently in receipt of the full details of the proposed amendments that the Ministry of Justice wishes to make, and therefore it's not possible to provide an updated business case for consideration for yourselves. With that in mind, I therefore request that this matter is deferred to a future meeting once I've had the opportunity to consider the Ministry of Justice's views. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And just to check, do we just need to note the deferral, or do we actually need to vote to agree a deferral?
I think it's just note the deferral. If that's acceptable.
Thank you very much. So I'll check for nods from fellow executive members who are all nodding. So happy to note the deferral of agenda item 9, and that will come back to a future executive. And thank you very much. That then takes us to agenda item 10, finance and performance outturn, which is set out on pages 331 to 378. And I'll hand over to Debbie.
Thank you. So this report outlines the finance and performance position for the year that we've just finished, for 2021. It identifies that there was an overspend of 1.2 million that has been funded from the use of reserves. And I think, as outlined in every report to this committee throughout the year, COVID has clearly had a major financial impact on the council, and it has adversely affected some of our performance indicators as well. The report does highlight a range of budget pressures in both adults and children's services in particular. I think it's fair to say the financial impact of COVID has been complicated. Various grant funds coming from numerous government departments throughout the year. But overall, we estimate the gross additional cost has been 26 million, with a further loss of fees, income from fees and charges of around 8 million. And much of that impact has been mitigated by government grants, in particular the general COVID grant and the Contained Outbreak Management Fund, which throughout the year wasn't a grant that we knew about. So further grants did come out in the final quarter of the year. Clearly, both COVID and the social care pressures, which are the two main issues financially, are national issues that are being seen in every other council across the country. And in particular, the social care, particularly adult social care, will require central government intervention and funding before that requires that intervention to fully resolve how local government is funded in respect of adult social care. And then just the summary positions outlined in table 1 at paragraph 12, and there is a detailed analysis of both finance and the performance across all areas of the council in the annexes to the report.
Thank you very much for that. I'll go to Councillor Eyre in a second, but again, if I could just check whether anybody else wanted to speak on this item. So then Councillor Eyre, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think struggling to see Debbie all the time we've had on sort of Zoom and been able to see each other clearly. Now we're in person. I'm actually going to get through across there, I think. So I just want to start by, and I think Debbie alluded to the challenges that we faced over the last 12 months. And I think a huge amount of credit go to Debbie and her team for the work that's gone on in ever shifting sands. I think this is my first actual full year outturn as an executive member for finance. And it's certainly one I won't forget. It's been incredibly intense and challenging, and huge amount of support from officers and a huge amount of work in the finance team that I think deserves credit. As we say, it has been 12 months of COVID. It's an outturn that reflects that. It's had a huge impact on both our finances and our performance. I think as the report alludes to, we had £8 million in lost income, including £4.6 million on lost car parking alone. Putting that in context, that's equivalent to the entire 4.99% increase in council tax that was put forward. So how we talk about dealing with some of those losses is really significant. The 8 million obviously would be almost 10% increase in council tax to cover those particular loss in income. The second thing I was going to allude to, and I think the speaker did as well, is the impact that it's had on adult social care. I think it's been that threefold impact. So we are starting to see more and more people coming to the council seeking support than we ever had before. Of those that are coming through onto the contact lines, more of those are requiring help than has ever happened before. And the third sort of triumvirate of that is those that are needing support are needing higher levels of support and more intense and more expensive levels of support. Yet again, we see the government have ducked this issue of adult social care. I think it was on his first day as Prime Minister, Boris Johnson stood on the steps of 10 Downing Street and said, quote, "We will fix this crisis in social care once and for all. It is time to change the record." Well, I feel like I want to change the record because every time we have this conversation, nothing has happened. We've had 13 different documents on social care reform in 17 years and nothing has come forward, nothing has changed. There does need to be a solution to the adult social care funding problems. And the answer is not through higher increases in council tax. I think we all know that. And it's time for the government to get a grip on that. We've had the Queen's speech and yet again, empty promises and no solution to the issue. I think we're fortunate to see the legacy of good management in terms of the financial performance of the council. That's why we have headroom in our reserves. That's why we have the ability to use that. And also why we're able to take £500,000 of our contingency budget in order to support YFAS at a time when people really needed that support. And it was something we were in that fortunate position through years of good management to be able to release some of those funds at the time when people needed them the most. Turning to the issues of performance, I think it's very difficult to judge performance in a COVID year. I think all of those indicators that we look at have been affected by COVID. We have mentioned staff sickness already. I did want to flag the strong performance of our city centre. I think while we are seeing a slight increase in vacancies in the city centre, we're still way above national averages in terms of our occupancy rates. And that's in no small part to the support we've been able to give to businesses, as Councillor Waller alluded to on the earlier report. And I think I take no shame in flagging some of the issues within my portfolio, and other members are happy to do that. But 2,526 businesses supported in terms of business grants. That's a total of £108 million. Over 1,000 businesses supported with micro grants this year to £1 million, and 3,192 businesses supported in terms of business rates to the tune of £70 million. And it wasn't just about supporting businesses. We've done a huge amount of work in our customers team to support residents as well. So 7,200 residents received council tax support to the tune of a total of £1 million. 2,091 residents were able to get access to the winter support grants of £546,000, and 500 residents were able to take benefit of the isolation grants of £250,000. I think reflecting on the level of support, I probably just wanted to finish by thanking the staff, because it's easy to talk about numbers and it's easy to talk about that, but it's actually our staff on the front line that have been out doing that and delivering for our residents under incredibly difficult circumstances over this year. And whether that be our waste crews operating in new socially distanced ways, the huge amount of pressure on customer contacts in terms of dealing with residents' queries, but also getting those grants and various levels of support out, getting businesses paid as quickly as possible, staff that have been redeployed, doing jobs that they probably never thought they would have to do as a local authority. That's one of the great assets we have as an organisation, is our ability and our staff and our commitment to the city and their ability to adapt quickly and take on new things, and especially the staff in adult social care who have operated under very, very difficult circumstances. With that, Chair, I'm happy to approve the recommendations at paragraph 10 on page 333.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kilbane.
Thanks, Chair. It seems I'm the only one with any questions. I've actually got two questions, Chair, and that's me done for this evening. So you're going to let me have both?
Of course.
Thank you. Just In terms of the adult social care budget, I mean, essentially we've used the government COVID grant to straighten the books in adult social care. Can you confirm that it's okay to spend the COVID containment management outbreak funds on costs that are not necessarily COVID related?
I'll go to Debbie first, please.
Yeah, the funds have all been spent appropriately. They've been used to, the Containment Outbreak Management Fund has been used to fund pressures in adult social care that are directly related to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kilbane.
I'm finished making me notes from that one. I'll have to come back to it. And the other question, my final question, is if we look on page 361 of item 10, there's a graph where we can see that cycling rates have dropped significantly in the city since 2014. I think the actual figures are in 2014 we have 40,000 people cycling regularly, and that's now gone down to about 28,000 people. So in other words, that equates to 1 in 3 people who used to cycle regularly have stopped. And most of that decline has happened in the last year when we've ironically had a Green executive member for transport, and all this at a time when nationally cycling rates are going up. So I'm just I'm wondering if you can tell me what the hell's gone wrong.
Thank you very much. I might ask James, as he's still in the room, to come back to the table, and I'm just having a quick. This is paragraphs 20 and 21 on page 361. Sorry, the paragraph 20 talks about a decrease in cycling activity in 2020, but then paragraph 21 almost slightly contradicts that, because then that talks about York having higher than average proportion engaging in cycling, and that it's a positive picture, with the percentage of adults in York who walk or cycle 5 times by week being higher than the regional and national averages. So any comments on that would be helpful.
I think, yeah, I mean, generally York has had a very high rate nationally when you compare it to other cities. I think there's only the Oxbridge cities that outperform us from memory. So I think we generally have performed very well on cycling. It has had a sort of bubbling along trend for the last 5 years. What I would say is 2020 was quite an abnormal year. We had a year of being told not to travel, and I accept some people using bikes as exercise, but it's changed people's behaviours quite significantly during 2020. So I wouldn't call it a typical year at this stage. Obviously, the council took a lot of measures last year to improve and make space for walking and cycling. But I think the government's please don't travel message will have been part of the factor for a dip in 2020.
Thank you very much for that, and coming back, James. So we've got the recommendations in front of us on report 10. If I could please see all those in favour of accepting those recommendations. Thank you very much. So Councillor Widdowson's turn to decide, but nonetheless, a clear majority in favour of accepting report 10. Thank you very much. That then takes us on to agenda item 11, which is the capital programme Outturn, which is between pages 379 and 408. Councillor Waller is going to be leaving the room at this stage, so I'll give him a couple of seconds to leave. And then once he's out of the door, Debbie, you can start to present the paper, please.
I haven't got too much by way of an introduction to this one. It's your usual report, sets out the continued progress in delivering the capital programme and sets out the year-end position as at the 31st of March, including the overall funding of the programme. There are no major issues from my point of view to draw to your attention, other than to say that obviously there continues to be a significant level of investment in a range of schemes, and we've included some key areas of progress listed at paragraphs 2 and 3 of the report.
Thank you very much. So in a second, I'll go to Councillor Eyre, but could I see those who want to talk on this agenda item, which is everybody but Councillor Kilbane. So we've obviously changed it around for the capital programme, but I'll go to Councillor Eyre first.
Thank you, Chair. And again, I think I'm glad to see people speaking on this, because as I always say, again, to change the record, it's such a huge area of spend that generally gets so little coverage in terms of what we do. And I think, again, we're seeing another year of significant investment in the city, showing our commitment to build back better and to grow the economy and build sustainability in this city. The outturn position of this year is £92 million, and almost a third of that is externally funded, which shows the confidence that partners have in the city and our ability to deliver. And that's what we have been doing this year. We've been delivering, not dithering. It's been key to positioning the city at the forefront of our COVID recovery, allowing us to get more external investment in. That could be simple things such as business as usual, the £6 million investment in highways that goes in, maintaining our commitment to increasing spending on our roads, along with our ambitious visionary projects. So we're looking at £20 million of new homes being spent this year, £3 million on the Beehive, transforming some of the service for some of our most vulnerable residents, £7 million on the Guildhall, which I was lucky enough to visit recently and is starting to come to fruition and really will be something that will stand out in the region and possibly nationally. And of course, the stadium now fully operational. The Yorkshire Unites have had a bit of a mixed bag in terms of results lately. And at one point, I was there when they won their first game at the stadium, which was something of concern. I think they lost their first 2 or 3. I'm starting to wonder whether it was perhaps cursed. But fortunately, they've turned that one around. But in terms of those things which have been delivered and will be delivered this year, we've also made significant progress on some of the most important schemes in this city, be that York Central, the York Outer Ring Road, the Castle Gateway project, or the station frontage. These will be key in the next couple of years to driving our economy and creating better opportunities and better jobs. Huge amounts of detail in this paper. I think £35 million on housing, which I'm sure Councillor Craghill will want to talk about. Significant investment to support the climate emergency, which Councillor Widdowson will probably want to talk about. But I thought I'll just reflect on what we're looking at going forwards. So we continue to be bold with £600 million of investment in the city over the next 5 years. That will see another £150 million on delivering new homes, £60 million further on delivering the York Outer Ring Road improvements, £40 million investment in our highway infrastructure over the next 5 years, £150 million on York Central, and £4 million on new library facilities. With that, Chair, I'm happy to approve the recommendations at paragraph 8 on page 381.
Thank you very much, Councillor Eyre, and I'll go to Councillor Craghill first.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to make a few comments on this report from a housing perspective. As you said, Councillor, I'd really like to congratulate staff for the fact that despite the COVID pandemic, during the last year, over £35 million has been spent on refurbishing and improving existing homes and on providing new ones. This has included £8.6 million on the maintenance and modernisation of our council housing stock, including tackling major damp issues, replacing kitchens, bathrooms and roofs, and upgrading door entry systems. Work on our first energy efficiency improvement programmes for both council and private sector properties is getting underway, with council investment of £2 million now being supplemented by a series of successful external funding bids, helping to reduce energy bills whilst also tackling climate change. Whilst some work had to be put on hold during COVID, £2.2 million was spent on improving and adapting people's homes and preventing falls, both to help with hospital discharge at the height of COVID and to enable people to remain independent at home. With respect to new housing, I'm really pleased that £3.9 million has been invested in creating 49 new units in our independent living schemes at Marjorie Wake Court and Lincoln Court. The inclusion of some apartments designed for people living with dementia is very welcome, as is the new communal lounge and community cafe at Marjorie Wake Court, and the intention to deliver community facilities to the surrounding area, as well as residents in Marjorie Wake Court. And of course, I also do welcome the progress that has been made, saving energy perhaps, that's been made over this very difficult past year with the £19.7 million investment in the provision of new homes through phase 2 of the housing delivery programme and our shared ownership scheme. The latter has enabled 27 households to purchase equity in their own home at a more affordable rate. The housing delivery programme has seen the first occupants moving into new, highly energy efficient homes with further shared ownership properties reserved for people with mobility challenges and for key workers. and our first zero carbon sites at Duncan Barracks and Burnholme, now progressing to procurement of a building contractor. Finally, Chair, I'd just like to note the importance of this capital programme overall for economic recovery and job creation following COVID. The fact that we have these programmes in place in York means that, as well as delivering the social value in the projects themselves, we are in a good position to develop local supply chains and create new jobs, including green jobs, and also to lever in further funding, as we've started to see with our energy efficiency retrofit programmes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Pagel. Councillor Smalley.
Thank you very much, Chair. And we had a testament to our energy efficiency a few minutes ago, didn't we? The lights turning off. I'll only speak briefly on this item, but I do obviously thank Councillor Eyre and all the officers, including Debbie, for all the work that went into this paper. Just wanted to draw councillors and residents' attention to the abbreviated Annex A, in particular, the really crucial capital investments in the realms of York's libraries. Firstly, the crucial Haxby Library provision. For too long now, the residents of Haxby and Wiggerton have been without a permanent library since the last library on Station Road experienced structural issues that led to its closure. I'd like to thank the residents and community partners across Haxby and Wiggerton for their patience and in particular their support in looking for a new home for the library. I'm really pleased that a consultation on the next steps will soon be launched by Explore, and I anticipate many more fruitful and constructive conversations about the next library. Secondly, councillors and residents might have seen the recent scaffolding covering the central of York Explore in recent months. This has been in place due to urgent roof repairs that are remedying issues with the historic roof, preventing further damage and future-proofing York Explore for years to come. I understand that the city's conservationists in particular were very pleased with the way in which the council and Explore worked together to match the new slate to the old original slate, and I'm sure the pigeons of York will be grateful. Finally, I take the pleasure again in noting the library investment in Acomb and Clifton, which Councillor Eyre just mentioned, which is a £4 million capital programme in total. I'm delighted to say that despite the impact of COVID-19, a great deal of progress has been made in recent months, and very shortly Explore will be launching consultations on both initial plans. This is very exciting, particularly as Acomb and Clifton recently celebrated their 50th birthday. I can't think of a better birthday gift than a £2 million facelift, protecting libraries so that they can continue to support communities for many more decades to come. Finally, I'd like to thank staff and volunteers at all Explore libraries for all their help in these three programmes. They really are unsung heroes in the city and they contribute so much to our lives. All libraries and reading cafes are now open, and I had a lovely coffee and cake at the Hungate Reading Cafe just this time last week actually. And I'd recommend that every resident pops into the local library or reading cafe for a good read and perhaps a coffee. Thank you ever so much, Chair.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Widdowson.
I'll be brief and try and stick to my area. What I'm really pleased to see in the capital programme is our £2 million investment in the development of the hyperhub charging stations. Pleased to learn about the progress of the new hyperhub at Monk's Cross, the largest in the north of England. This is exactly what our EV strategy set out. Several years ago, we were one of the first cities to introduce a public electric car charging network. This pioneering work is popular and heavily used. So to extend this pioneering work is really exciting. By providing a future-proof network with high-quality facilities, we continue to support this increasing demand, whilst gaining the ripple effects, or benefits even, of improved air quality and reducing climate change impacts. Last week on Clean Air Day, I had the chance to go through an extremely long list of York's achievements and the leading work that has been carried out over the last few years to tackle emissions and improve air quality across the city, the majority of which has come from the capital budget. A couple that are really worth noting: all our city centre buses comply with the Clean Air Zone, and this is in no small part to the funding we put in place to support this initiative. Indeed, all of York's park and ride buses are fully electric. And again, York is recognised across England for the innovative Kick the Habit campaign, which is now being rolled out across several councils across England. As we continue to work towards becoming an internationally recognised ultra-low emission city, I'm happy to see our investment making a direct impact on the city's future and our residents' well-being. I welcome this report.
Thank you very much for that. We have the recommendation from Councillor Eyre at the start that we accept the recommendations in agenda item 11. Could I please see all those in favour of accepting them? Thank you very much. That's a clear majority in favour of accepting the recommendations on agenda item 11. Yes, please, Councillor Eyre, if you could wave at Councillor Waller, and we'll give him again a couple of seconds. It's slightly quicker on Zoom to leave and come back into the meeting than it is in person. So once Councillor Waller's sat down, I'm sure he'll be very excited on agenda item 12, Treasury Management Annual Report and the review of Prudential indicators. Debbie.
Yeah, saved the best for last again, haven't we? So it's a statutory report required by the Prudential Code, and it outlines the Treasury Management activity during the year. Clearly, as I think we've said in every report this evening, 2021 has been an unusual year. In respect of the Treasury, hasn't been too much impact. The main challenge has been in cash flow planning, given all the various government grants and the kind of stop-start nature of the year. The other main issue to draw to your attention is that, as planned through the budget process, we have started to borrow again, and we've included all the details of the new borrowing that's been undertaken within paragraph 11 of the report. And then just to mention that this same report was considered by Audit and Governance Committee on the 16th of June in their scrutiny role, so it's been reviewed there as well.
Thank you very much, Debbie. Councillor Eyre.
Thank you, Chair. It's a report of huge numbers with the inverse proportion of little interest, be that from members or financial return on our investments, and even less excitement, though I notice Chloe is here, so I don't expect this report to be on the front page of the press tomorrow in terms of its importance. Though we jest, it is probably one of the most significant things that we do in our local authority. I think the numbers we're talking about in terms of making sure that cash flow is managed, the borrowing, our investments, we wouldn't be able to do what we do without any of that, and my hats off go to the work that goes on. I've written down here that it's almost like the legs of a duck in terms of the way that the duck being the council and the legs underneath the water, those sort of things. But I thought actually that's probably not the message you want to take back to your staff. So I'll probably just think of a better metaphor for the next report in terms of how that work goes. So happy to move the recommendations, Chair.
Thank you very much. So we have that moved by Councillor Eyre. Could I please see all those in favour of accepting that recommendation on agenda item 12? Thank you very much. It was Councillor Craghill I was watching for a hand, but are you happy with agenda item 12? Yeah, great. Thank you very much. That's a clear majority in favour of accepting agenda item 12. That then takes us to agenda item 13, which is urgent business. I'll just check with Fiona, but as far as I'm aware, there is no urgent business. So just to thank all councillors and officers for attending, those that took part in the meeting, and those that are watching along at home. Thanks all. Bye-bye.